The other day I was driving home from church, and it was sunny and warm and beautiful. Crystal blue skies in all directions. It felt like spring had arrived at last after what has seemed like an unusually cold and harsh winter. I rolled down the windows of my car and I cranked up a absolutely thumping dance remix of Aretha Franklin singing Freeway of Love as I drove along the Watterson Expressway. Just as I was passing the exit for the fairgrounds, one of those enormous UPS 747 jumbo jets glided right over the highway as it was landing at the airport, passing directly above my car. It was glorious. It was awesome. I felt overcome with this incredible sense of joy. I remember driving along thinking to myself, man, it is good to be alive. As I continued on and I turned up 3rd Street on my way home, I saw an older woman pushing a shopping cart up the sidewalk. The cart appeared to be filled with clothes and hats and shoes. As I drove past, I recognized her face. I had seen her many times before, standing at the end of the highway exit ramp, holding a sign saying that she was homeless and hungry. My heart immediately broke a little. Coming across someone out on the street in my neighborhood who I know is struggling to survive is sadly a pretty common occurrence these days, at least in the part of town where I live. My mind immediately began to wonder, how can this be the situation we all live with? With all of the resources and money and luxuries that I have and so many of us have, how have we decided as a society to just let some people be unhoused, hungry, unprotected, and forced to beg along our roadways? I thought about the law passed by our Kentucky legislature last year that makes that woman with the shopping cart a criminal and subject to arrest because of her circumstances, rather than providing her with support and care. I felt myself becoming angry and disappointed, worried for that woman whose name I do not know, irritated that those that we elect to represent us seem to be so heartless and cruel, wondering why we can't do better by each other. I thought, I really need to call my neighbor across the street who happens to serve on Louisville Metro Council and tell her that I want to see more being done. I really need to volunteer myself for just a few more hours than I already do to work at the South Louisville Community Ministries food pantry. Now, after I got home, I was sitting in my backyard with my dogs, and I noticed a bunch of daffodils that had just begun to spring up and flower. And I was reminded of that sense of joy that I had been feeling just a little earlier in the day. And I wondered where it had gone. There is so much beauty, so many blessings happening all around us every single day. So much to be grateful for, to be humbled by, to sing out praises for, that we get to experience. This world this community, this city we call home, are filled with amazing people out there right this minute doing random acts of kindness, advocating for kinder ways of being, reaching out with compassion and empathy and generosity. At the very same time, there is so much bad news, so many tragedies of our human making, too much suffering, persecution, and hardship that could be avoided if we just collectively made better choices. Every time I turn on NPR, it seems like another news story about the destructive consequences of some new government action. Defunding established programs that have ensured that fresh water is available to Western states. Tariffs instituted against our closest trading partners, leading to layoffs and price increases for absolutely no good reason, as far as I can tell. Every week I hear from someone in this congregation, someone who is dealing with a new medical diagnosis or navigating hurtful family relationships, or who is struggling with their own mental health issues. I also hear about somebody's kid getting braces, about somebody's child getting ready to graduate from college, a member who is celebrating a big milestone birthday, or another newcomer who has joined our church. For all of us, it seems that being alive and just getting through today comes with both pains and with pleasures, with sunny afternoons of daffodils and joy, and with long, dark nights of the soul. What are we to make of all this? How are we to respond? How do we keep a perspective that does not ignore or deny the hard realities happening to us and around us, yet also not become consumed by them and unable to remain appreciative for the many gifts that this life has for us as well? The 20th century writer E.B. White, who may be best known to many of us as the author of those children's classics, Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little. E.B. White once put it this way. He said, "It is hard to know when to respond to the seductiveness of the world and when to respond to its challenges. If the world were merely seductive, that would be easy. If it were merely challenging, that would be no problem. But I arise every morning torn between the desire to improve the world and the desire to enjoy it. That makes it hard to plan the day." Last week, while I was sitting around outside, enjoying the sunshine and watching my basset hound children playing amidst the daffodils, I remember really feeling that push and pull of the Spirit. I wanted desperately to revel in the glory of that moment, yet also felt weighed down by the heaviness of all that is going on. It brought to mind a particular conversation that I vividly remember having with somebody back in June of 2016. It was during the week right after the mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, in which 49 people were killed by a random act of violence at an LGBTQAI gathering place. During that week, many of us were feeling shocked and saddened and fearful. Now, I was putting together the Sunday service that week, and we had planned to sing "Joy to the World" by the Three Dog Night. You know, the one that starts out with "Jeremiah was a bullfrog, was a good friend of mine. As I was finalizing the order of service, I had some misgivings. I asked a member of the staff at the church that I was serving at the time. I asked them if perhaps we should change that song in light of the tragedy that had just taken place. I told them that I was concerned it might be inappropriate to sing Joy to the World. It might seem like we were ignoring the pain that folks were feeling. This staff member, who identified as non-binary and had once been a victim of anti-LGBTQ violence themselves, told me, "Bruce, I don't think you should change that at all. I really believe that those people who were killed and their families who are mourning would not want us to edit out the happiness we can have and can share with each other because of what happened to them. I think that they would want us to remember that the most powerful form of resistance against oppression and division is refusing to give up or give in to despair. They would want us to keep on joyfully celebrating who we are and what we know to be true, no matter what." So that Sunday morning in June, we all sang "Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog" loudly and jubilantly together. We danced in the aisles of that sanctuary in loving memory of those from that disco in Florida who couldn't be there to dance with us. In a rather poignant prayer written some years ago, Unitarian Universalist minister Dick Gilbert addressed the challenges of finding balance between being engaged with our very troubled world and remaining hopeful and thankful for our blessings. He spoke of it as being torn between the desire to save the world and the desire to savor it. He frames this as struggling to choose between enjoying the sweet taste of my own joy or sharing the bitter cup of my neighbor. Gilbert poetically invites us to ask, what am I to do when the glow which lights my everyday illuminates the hurting world around me? And he prays, "God of justice, if such there be, take from me the burden of my question and help me to live in some greater vision without always having an answer." Now, towards the end of his prayer, Dick Gilbert does come to an answer. It is an answer that I am coming to as well, and trying my best to live by as we go through these eventful days of 2025 together. He hears the God of justice answering back, saying that to save the world, we must savor it. I think this means that we cannot sustain our efforts to end injustices, to protect those among us who are vulnerable, and to cope with our own personal fragility, unless we are also intentionally finding ways to connect deeply with all that we love, all that we value, all that we hope for. Now, I'm going to tell you that doing that, finding ways to balance that very real sense of despair and alarm that comes from listening openly to the cries of the hurt and the hungry and to my own hurt and hunger, and also being able to resist that desire to just surrender and retreat into the privilege of privacy and comfort seeking. Finding that balance is not easy to do on many a Monday morning. But the good news is this: none of us has to try to do both those things all by ourselves. We are blessed to have this beloved community to cheer us on, to cry with us, to laugh with us, to offer us opportunities to save the world and to savor it too. This coming Friday evening here at All Peoples, we are going to gather to honor the arrival of the spring equinox, connecting with that life-giving energy of our earth renews our ability to push for climate justice, even as our leaders are pushing back. This coming Saturday, we're going to be having a fun trivia night for everyone, celebrating the importance and the value of learning and knowledge is a way of resisting the ignorance and the intolerance being promoted in our society. And next Sunday morning, we will welcome Pastor Elmer Zavala, who serves a local congregation made up of many immigrant and refugee families. Hearing the stories and the experiences of those being targeted and put at risk in our own city more clearly reveals our shared humanity. It empowers us to be with them in solidarity. For me these days, going with many of you all to all of the marches and the rallies and the protests that are happening, like the rally to support Medicaid this coming Friday here in Louisville, or the Trans Joy Party event taking place next week in Frankfurt. Going to all those things is not some obligation, some burden, something we just have to do. It is a wonderful opportunity to actually connect with other people, good people, who share our values and are being proactive in promoting goodness in the face of a whole lot of badness. All of this is what the path forward must look like, must be like, if we are going to keep going together. Each and every day, rising, feeling pulled between our calling to engagement and our need for self-care, thoughtfully taking in the latest news, mindfully managing our own personal limitations, trying to get filled up with empathy and righteous outrage. And at the very same time, still getting up, still going out, still connecting and participating and fully reveling in all of the richness, all of the pleasures and the people that are part of our lives as well. And when we get out of balance, which we all do, when we get too caught up in our own sense of helplessness, when we get too cut off from our responsibilities to take action, we will be here in this congregation to compassionately accompany one another back to that place of spiritual grounding, back to that place of renewed hope, renewed resolve, and resilience once more. So may it be, and amen.